Thank you, Aisha and Linda, for joining me today. My name is Tamina, and I work at the Australia Council within the international team. I am currently in the land of the Wangal people of the Eora Nation, but I also work on Gadigal land. I would like to extend and pay my respects to elders past and present, and also extend that respect to any First Nations folks who are tuning in or listening to this conversation today. I am sitting in my living room. I have a blue shirt on. I'm wearing glasses. Behind me is an artwork, and it's a late afternoon here on Wangal land. I will pass on to Linda and Aisha to introduce themselves as well, and then we'll head into the conversation.
Hi, my name is Linda Iriza, and I am really glad to be here. And a little spiel about me is that I am a community auntie, and I guess with that, I work a lot within the art scene here in Bulu. And I would like to acknowledge that I work and live and dance on the land, unceded land of the Wajak Noongar Bibilan people. And I would like to extend my respect and acknowledgements to elders past, present, and emerging. And I am sitting in my kitchen, but it's very much a plain background, a plain white background. I'm wearing a green shirt with a brown jacket. I've got long braids and headphones. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Aisha Kilsanuto. I waft around wearing many hats. I'm wearing a grey jumper. I'm in my dining room. I am a young, thin Malay person with a long mullet, and yeah.
The Australia Council recently released our first diversity report, and the document was a stocktake of the data and evidence about diversity in the arts sector. The report assessed the inclusivity of audiences and participants, where the line of representation sat around the culture and creative workforce, leaders, and then also the representation within Australia Council staff as well. Alongside that report last year, there was a round of sector consultation that occurred. It was called the Reimagine What Next consultation, but it really was intended to be about engaging the industry to talk about what the challenges were that we were facing and what was required so that we can ensure that the future of working in the creative and cultural industries is safe, generative, and equitable. I'm just so excited to be speaking to you both and just to have this opportunity to talk to two incredible people from my hometown in Boorloo. I'm going to hand over to you both. If it would be really wonderful to hear about a bit more about yourselves, what gets you ticking, how that kind of relationship and collaboration grew between you, and your journey within this arts industry. I might hand over to Aisha if that's okay.
I became active in the Boorloo arts industry, I guess, in 2016 with an interest in curating exhibitions. Like, quite simply, I wanted to gain experience doing that. I wanted to learn how to do that, and I did independently. And I was also very briefly going to Central TAFE, studying visual arts, and I really enjoyed the experience of curating an exhibition, to work with artists, particularly emerging artists, to realise a body of work for public presentation, and also like giving them the skills to and confidence to talk about it. And off of the back of that, I worked with Gabby Liu on Belonging, which was kind of like a community arts initiative, which was a lot to do with wanting to platform kids of colour, that kind of wanting that community labour and wanting to hold people and talk them through the tools for empowering themselves has been something that's always present for me. I also am on the board at Cool Change Contemporary. I'm an installer at Perth Institute of Contemporary Arts, and I am a writer. and a DJ. And DJing has been a really recent thing that I learned through the Soul Alphabet Take Up Space workshops. And I think I kind of went in being like, oh, like, I don't know what this is going to be, like, what this will mean to me, and what this will mean in relation to other people, and like about what I want to do with my hands and my body when I'm making. But it's actually really, really fun. And it's kind of blown my world apart in the sense that like it's like a whole new scene of people and activists and community organizers that I hadn't really ever interacted with. And it's quite refreshing in that sense. It's like a whole new format. So I feel like, yeah, that's basically where I'm at right now in terms of my practice and my background.
I'm the director of Soul Alphabet, and essentially that's kind of like a weird word of saying I'm the director of this thing. It feels unfamiliar and kind of strange, but I'll find a better title later. But so that started in 2017, and essentially the work started was that before 2017, I had finished high school, and I had like a really small clothing brand with a friend of mine who just recently moved back to Nigeria in 2017. A student from his name is Daniel, to study at the University of Western Australia, and essentially he was running the African Student Club at UW, and he reached out to me saying, "Hey, we've got this opportunity of curating like a fun party at an art exhibition." Because to get other young Africans also in the space because the artwork that's being shown is by other incredible Southern African artists. And essentially we planned the party. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of incredible creatives, because the way we actually met was like, we sort of all went into our networks of messaging, the photographers and dancers and musicians and DJs we all know. And we all just met at the exhibition space and had like a whole like long table chat about what we want to do and how we envision the night to be. And essentially, so Alphabet grew in that sense of having so many people walk in and out of the space and giving them the freedom of sort of coming in and saying what they would like to give to the table, whether you just want to perform or you would like to like volunteer at the door, for example, and sort out the door sales. And then people will sort of change. And I guess only last year was when we were like, okay, this is something that we should continue doing, and not just throwing parties in the sense of like giving a platform to creatives to perform, but also we can do a lot more, whether it's workshops, like for example, the DJ workshops, to also writing workshops, because I feel like there's a lot of creativity and like a lot of young people who are willing and who have the skill of sharing, and simply they might just need a space to just come and test out their ideas. And also in terms of just like in Bulu, like the scene was kind of a bit horrific in terms of in terms of the lack of just like young, I would, because I'm a Rwandan woman, so I'm a Black woman, so I will only sort of speak from the Black experience. There was just a lack of just Black creatives, whether they're DJs or writers, who are visible, even though these people existed, but there was a lack of them who were visible. And essentially we were like, okay, who's visible in the space? And it's usually like your white DJs or white creatives, and how could they pay back in terms of reparations and through their time. But it was also a great thing to see community coming together. So I guess like where our, like Aisha and myself, like where our work sort of meets is there's that sense of like community and sort of giving to these spaces, and like hoping that things will get better for for those who come after us?
I think everyone I've talked to who's come out of those workshops, the Take Up Space workshops, we all agree how tangible and visible all of these new DJs on the scene are. Like all of these people of color, all of these Black women are taking up space. And it's really obvious, but also in the sense that, you know, like we've all learned how to DJ, but the ripple and effect of those workshops is that we are all supporting each other and getting gigs.
Yes.
We are going to each other's gigs. We're lending each other gear. We're like all of this stuff, like that doesn't necessarily have to do with the planning of the workshop, but it's a ripple on effect of those workshops taking place and all of these people coming together and meeting. Sometimes
There's this predication of a scarcity model, right? In the sense of what we might be operating in. And I've always felt from afar, in terms of just being witness to how this has grown, Linda, for yourself with Soul Alphabet, is that there is an embedded care and I guess love that is organic and very much natural to the way of how this work is starting to unroll, and how Soul Alphabet is starting to continue evolving and shifting. And could you speak a little bit to that in the sense of maybe, you know, the steps you've taken, and also the group and the people that have been involved, how that's worked for you guys?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that only now I'm able to sort of look back and see the steps that I've taken, that they're built up to something. But before, I wasn't able to sort of clearly see the whole map or the road that we took. So starting with no knowledge about how this machine and structure works was one of the best things, because we sort of went in as like really excited young people who had so many like optimistic goals and hopes. And when you have that ability, like of seeing so many possibilities, you're very excited because you feel like there's nothing limiting you. So essentially when we started, it was a huge like group effort of just a lot of people coming together and sharing their ideas, and really sharing them, not in the sense of like censoring themselves, saying, oh, this is not possible, but everybody was like, I'm going to give this because it's a valid idea and I'm actually going to see it through and it's going to happen. So I think that has helped a lot, and that has sort of guided everything that we're doing even today, because we sort of said that we want to stay as far away if possible from like these really violent structures of whether it's like going through the entire thing of like being friendly with like the police to get funding, for example, which is something that a lot of people from our community, like from a lot of the African community, in terms of getting actual funding, a lot of them is funded through the police and being friendly with the police. So going through the city councils and being really friendly with the city councils, even though there's like the funding bodies that are existing, it's great to get funding, but also it's just, are you willing to sort of go through that violence and accept it and push yourself through it? So I think us not going through this whole art institutional sort of like structure that exists, having no knowledge of it, was really great.
I guess that sense of you mentioned as well initially around the trajectory of how you've engaged within the Boorloo art scene. How has that trajectory occurred and shifted for you?
I think having only been practicing for like 5 years, it's always been in this kind of ephemeral way. When I do work within institutions, so for example, I've worked with Propel Youth Arts and the Art Gallery Western Australia, but it's usually just on a like one exhibition basis. But then like on the flip side, moving into a space like Cool Change, which within an arts community and arts industry that is very whitewashed and very white dominated, still has its challenges. A space within which that I've had to advocate for a lot, that should sort of have been present from the beginning, and like everyone on the board is super aware of that, is always in conversation with me and other people on the board. It is really hard work to be advocating constantly, to be the spokesperson, and once you become the spokesperson, people look to you to speak publicly to various issues that you don't necessarily have a full grasp of, that I don't necessarily have a full grasp of. Being quite a young artist with not really any long-term institutional experience, it's life experience, right? And I think I've finally come to a place where I feel comfortable with where Cool Change is at, and I can sort of move on to other things and like and leave it in somebody else's hands as we like naturally overturn the board, as it should be with any RE. And so I think now I'm just deciding where my community advocacy lies, where my own joy lies, and how that manifests in like actual tangible work.
I'll even touch on the last point that Aisha, you mentioned about like, because I think being able to have that sense of like fluidness of like moving from one thing to another and not really feeling way too attached to any one form of creating or any one institution is actually, on one side, it's a huge privilege because like not many people have the ability to do that. But also on the other side, a few years ago, we just saw ourselves as just maybe doing an annual event that you have music, dance, poetry, film, and that's all we did. But then now we've been able to just like shift that and say that we're not this one thing. We can run like writing workshops, we can run DJing workshops, and now we have like the really cool opportunity that like Aisha, like you being at Cool Change was a big link up, which is kind of crazy because I don't think we've ever imagined that having, even though it's not like a permanent space, but it's going to be the first time that we have a space for a whole month to play around with and go crazy and do whatever we want to do. It's a lot of work as well, but essentially now being able to say that a lot of young Black and brown artists can have a space where they can showcase their art and also just go in and just chill and feel like they can just come and use the free Wi-Fi.
How can we continue supporting each other and supporting that like self-determination and independence? Because you know, that idea earlier of now the institution is shifting its gaze to Soul Alphabet or to yourself, and how do you protect that?
Yeah, which is really difficult, and the only way you can protect that is continue to check ourselves. Like and where I'm at right now as well is we, even with the Cool Change programming that we have, is that like instead of us just programming every single event that we're going to be having, we're actually just bringing in other people who are now doing cool stuff. I'm now really interested in is like bringing as many people through and removing my gaze from like this thing of saying, oh my God, this art institution is interested in us, me. But it's like, no, like now that I'm here, this is 10 other people. And also because I'm here, I feel like this is a safe environment. Like with Cool Change, like with Aisha being there, I feel like there's some sort of safety. And because I know that I could trust like the work that Aisha has done and is doing. So once I know that like this space is safe, I'm going to bring 10 other people. And then hopefully next time, if I have the same opportunity, there's going to be 30 other people. Or then next time I don't even get the opportunity, the people that have come into the space are the ones getting those opportunities. So I think the only way we've been able to protect this is just continuing to check ourselves and not saying that, okay, we're now like the only people who do this. We're not the only people who are interested in doing DJ workshops. We're not the only people who are interested in doing writing workshops. There's many other great writers who can do a writing workshop and write it better than we've ever done.
What have you felt is needed so that folks like yourself are supported, are backed in these spaces where you might be one of not a lot, and everyone else is, say, cisgendered white only, for example? what are the things that you would need to support you?
I don't know if that's a question that I've found the answer to. And that's the reality of it, I think. In basically every circumstance that I've been in, like institutionally or like even with regards to REs, I've always had to advocate really intensely, whether that be with regards to being trans or like staunchly supporting a more anti-racist approach to organizational structure and strategy, because I know that this work is important, but it's not something that I can just keep doing forever. But like that said, it has paid off, the work, and like the examples that Linda and I are sharing about the collaboration between Soul Alphabet and Cool Change. I think what it requires is much more staunchness from our white co-workers and peers, and also non-Black co-workers and peers who can very easily be just as complacent in structural and institutional racism. And I have experienced time like people just being quiet and allowing me to be the voice of rage, which I imagine is the same for all of us. Yeah. So I think that the circumstances in which I felt supported have been those circumstances where it's been instigated by a collective of people, including my white and non-Black peers, not just myself. And I felt much more safe to voice my opinion and supported in voicing my opinion, and not even just my opinion, but also my a changed way of going about things and responding to social circumstances.
So I just wanted to finish up the conversation in that sense of how we as Black POC racialized folks can be better working on and being on unceded First Nations land on this continent.
It's a big question, and I guess the first thing that I would say, like within like the community that I'm in, which is I guess firstly the Rwandan community and then the wider African community, is that one, I need to take my education very seriously in terms of learning the history of this land, learning the history of the people of this land, because I think I come from a culture that's, again, there's a long history of colonialism, a long history of racism, and sometimes you sort of get into a position of saying that my experience is worse than your experience, which is a very problematic space to be in.
I would largely agree with that, like undertaking as much learning as possible and as much listening as possible, and listening to elders where possible, doing the work to make yourself available to listen as well. Make the time. Especially, particularly in the context of an arts industry in which like the expectation is to constantly be slogging it in various ways, whether that be volunteer. I think that it's very easy to use that as an excuse to not make the time or to carve out space for listening and being silent on stolen lands.
Thank you both so much for speaking to me. It's just, yeah, it's been a joy. No, it's been really great to talk, and I really hope that we can do this soon and that I can one day be back in beautiful Boorloo and witness a set and get to see this gorgeous exhibition as well. Really excited.
Yes, yes, come through.